Hello fellow YouTubers, I'm doing a review on the SOG Salute. It is one of their fusion line of knives, which is a low cost, high value line. They are made in China, but here are the specs for the knife first. It has a 3.625 inch blade, which I'll call a 3.5 inch. The steel is 8CR13 MOV. It does have the black oxide coating on the blade and on the handle scales. It also has a pretty handy thumb stud, which is ambidextrous. It goes both ways and can be adjusted up and down this little track. See, I've moved mine towards the handle here just to make it more comfortable for me to deploy. You can have it along anywhere in this track. It just has a little flathead slot right there where you can loosen it up and move it. The handle has G10 scales over full stainless steel liners that run the entire length and stick out on the end here. Looks like you could attach a lanyard there as well. I wouldn't put a lanyard in any of these holes because it would get cut by the blade pretty easily. It does have the SOG bayonet style clip with its usual nice design. Has plenty of room there, with this going flat against the handle, so it does hold it on your pants quite well, and can be switched to this hole right here. So you just pull out that little screw there, flip it, put it on that side, and put the screw back in. It cannot be put to tip down carry, it's tip up only. It's also a lockback design as well, so it's going to be a pretty strong lockup on that. The weight is 4.2 ounces, and so it's not an extremely heavy knife, but it's not a really light knife either. You actually have a pretty good, feel like you have a pretty good chunk of steel in your hands whenever you're holding this thing. It is machined in the handles with little grooves, gives it, I guess, a little more of a tactical look to it. I'm not really fond of these because you don't really get any grip there. There's not enough surface. You do get more grip in this area, and these give you really good grip because essentially it's like jimping on the side of your knife. The lockback is jimped. Not sure if this camera will show that, but the lockback is jimped, and you have the scallops in the bottom here. They're not really sharp enough to be called jimping, but they are scalloped. They do grip pretty well in your fingers here, considering where pretty much the fat of your hand goes into it. There is jimping on top of the blade, which you might be able to see on this camera, but it's actually really effective. It keeps your thumb from moving up on the blade. If jimping is important to you, it's not that big a deal to me, but again, just the way I feel, if you're going to put jimping, it might as well be useful, and this is pretty useful. You can also see that there's a SOG stamp on this side. Not really anything on this side. I've seen pictures where it says like Fusion by SOG or SOG Fusion on some of these, but mine doesn't say that. It does say China down at the bottom of the blade there. This thing came pretty sharp. I mean, it was probably one of my sharpest knives I got. Still really sharp. Haven't had to touch up the edge at all after using this thing. It is one of my favorite EDC knives just because the size is such that it is not necessarily a small knife, and that it has the 3.5 inch blade, and the handle is about 4.5 inches long, so it fills up my hand pretty good. You can still see, the end of the knife there. A lot of my knives, they'll end like right there. This actually goes out a little past that. And even with these exposed liners here, there's just two liners. I'll say just two. Most, if they have full liners, there are only two liners. But you can see that both liners do go up past the G10 scales, but that doesn't cause any discomfort for me. Even if you squeeze hard, might make a couple of marks in your finger or something, but it doesn't hurt, doesn't, really do anything bad. But then I don't use it really hard, so that may be different for you if you use it more than just, for normal everyday use. I do like the way that the G10 is carved out or milled out here for your fingers on both sides, and it is pretty much exactly the same on both sides, this hollow being slightly larger than this hollow, but I haven't really seen that be too bad. It's still comfortable if I hold it with my left hand, even though I'm a righty. This grip up here, these things I was talking about, they're kind of like jimping on the handle. They don't do much for you up here because they have kind of, I guess, scallops up top, or really rough jimping or something. These don't really do anything at all. Now, if you were to put your finger right here and use it, that might help. But I think that's more for when you're holding it. It's going to grip this finger right here. Again, these seem kind of useless down here. I wish they would have just left that flat G10, but I guess that would give you some grip for your fingers going this way. So maybe that's why they did it. The lockback is really nice and fluid. The blade, once you push down, the lockback is loose, and it does have this guard here that hits your finger. So I suggest you keep your finger in this choil here, or this cutout area, because that's going to hit your finger. Because if you don't and you just hold it back here and you swing it, it's liable to come back and pop you. Which, I mean, if you really want to do that, then that's up to you. But me, I'll keep my finger there, let it hit, and then you can close it one-handed. Very easy. Very easy to open one-handed. A little hard to do at this angle around the camera, but generally, you just flick it, it pops out. Good solid snap to it. Really solid lock up. It doesn't move, doesn't wobble, doesn't do anything, just stays there firm. But I have used this, pretty much if I'm only able to carry say like one knife, if I'm not carrying my Skyline or whatever, because generally my loadout includes at least 2 knives, a smaller and then a larger like this, just for bigger stuff. But if I could only have one, I would have this, because it can do the same stuff the smaller knives can, because of the extremely sharp edge, and the blade is not unwieldy. But it's also a thicker blade than most of the smaller knives, so it's also good for the heavier duty uses. Stuff you might be scared to use a smaller knife for. General heft of it, you can kind of feel it in your pocket, but it is flat enough. The clip to the side of your pocket is not digging into your side of your hands. Something with the rounded handles I don't really like clipped to my pockets, because you can feel it. Something with a flat handle and relatively thin profile, your hand seems to go past quite a bit easier. So overall, I really love this knife. It's got kind of the tactical design, so it looks kind of cool. And I imagine if you really wanted to, you could use that bottom there. It'd be pretty nasty to hit somebody with, considering there's 2 steel plates coming out of the bottom. I don't really plan on doing that, just good welcome for friends. How you doing, smack? But no, I don't really see using that for any real reason. But you could. And I imagine this blade would be able to tickle somebody's ribs if you really had to. But overall, it's a really nice knife. Only 30 bucks. Hard to beat something like this. A good big chunk of steel for $30. Razor sharp. Keeps a nice edge. I have used it essentially daily for a week or 2 at a time. Just a lot of times I will carry this with another knife, like my Skyline or SOG Salute, just because I like a smaller blade for smaller tasks and the bigger blade for bigger tasks. But This is one that can do both pretty easily. I just like knives and like carrying them for some reason. Overall, I would definitely recommend this knife to anybody that was, wanting a nice, inexpensive folder, extremely sturdy, reversible. Seems to be one of the only true ambidextrous knives out there, and that this clip will go to either side. There's no real difference in design of either side of the handle, so it shouldn't be any difference in comfort for left and right hand. Some ambidextrous knives still seem geared towards right-handed users. This one is not that way. They also have a silver version, which I'm probably going to get. This coating does seem to wear off, fairly easily. There are a couple of spots where it's gotten a little shiny, but that's not really a big deal. I don't care if my knife blades show wear. That's more of a badge of honor for a knife, I think. But all in all, I would say this is a great knife. I would definitely suggest you buy one. And really, that's about all to it. But this is the SOG Salute, part of their Fusion line. I'd say buy one. Thank you, and y'all have a nice day, and have a happy Thanksgiving.